Okay, good day to everyone. And in today's episode of Growing Your Tree of Prosperity, I'm going to talk a little bit about something that I think might be emerging as a very hip kind of trend. And it is the concept of mini retirements and career breaks. Okay, and it is currently in the spotlight right now based on the Business Times article on the 5th of September 2025. Apparently, HSBC did a study on affluent investors, and these are people with investable assets between $100,000 to $2 million. And these people want to have early mini retirements. Okay, so these are breaks lasting 6 to 12 months, where someone would travel to a very familiar place like Malaysia, Australia, or Japan. Okay, and this is a very intentional career break, to focus on working on themselves, developing their passions, looking after their well-being, and looking after their family. All right. And here's something very interesting. Now, in that survey, it says that 62% of surveyed Singaporeans are confident in planning for these retirements, compared to 74% under the global average, which means that Singaporeans are not very confident when it comes to planning for mini retirement. And maybe they feel that if they were to get an early retirement, a mini retirement package, they might not be able to get back to the workforce at the previous salary that they are drawing. I really don't know. Okay, so let's look at some specifics of these mini retirements. And I think the first time this concept of breaking your retirement down into tiny little chunks, right? I think it's found in the book The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And so Tim Ferriss actually was the first to just come up with this idea. Instead of waiting, like in the FIRE movement or in conventional retirement, waiting until your 50s or 60s, why don't you break your retirement down into micro chunks and maybe go for a 1-year retirement every 4 to 5 years, for example? Okay, yeah. So let's dive deeper into some of the justifications for this mini retirement. All right. The fact of the matter is that there are some things you can't wait until you're older to experience. Like, for example, I'm 51 years old. I'm not sure whether I can go to Lhasa in Tibet and engage in high altitude travel. I'm not sure, right? Apparently, it can lead to high altitude sickness. All right. I definitely am not prepared to go for a long trek in Africa. Okay. And there are some things which, even if I wanted to, I can't do. And this is some of the really big regrets I have in my life. All right. One is this thing known as a JET program, where you can go to Japan and teach English for a year. Right. I thought that is something which I think if you're a fresh graduate, is something that you want to do because you can pick up some really solid Japanese skills. And it'll be a good reward, after a 3 to 4 year degree program, to just enjoy yourself, pick up a new culture, right? And maybe even find a job in Japan. Right, so that's something that you can do. The other thing that I really regret, I think you can't do this after the age of 35. There are these agricultural work visas where you can travel to New Zealand, and you can maybe pick up grapes or harvest apples, but you can't find any other work, right? Because it's almost like a part work, part tourism kind of package. So you can only do that when you're young. All right. So these are the things that you might want to do before you're older. Okay. And obviously, once you go through these mini retirements, you are expected to go back to work, but you come back refreshed. All right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about how to plan the finances when you want to travel. Now, in the past, it's quite difficult. I would have to go to the library, I pick up a book on digital nomad lifestyle, and then I go through all the notes on how to prepare. But these days, I noticed that ChatGPT is very helpful in this regard. So what I did was I asked ChatGPT to estimate the cost to travel to Japan for 6 months. I think this is in USD. all right? And it does not count the actual transport expenses. This is how much it costs to live in 6 months in Japan. And the estimate for a budget travel would be about 13,500 USD for a budget travel, right? If you want a mid-range kind of experience where you spend about 150 US dollars a day, which is quite a lot for a single guy, then you are looking at an amount that is about 26,000 USD, right? Closer to about $30,000 in Singapore. So something they can actually actively plan for and save, right? To prepare for that trip for 6 months, right? And there's some other points that you want to take note of before you go for your mini break. Don't jeopardize your emergency savings. They are sacrosanct. So make sure that whatever amounts that you have prepared for your trip is beyond the emergency savings that you have. So the $30,000, for example, is on top of your emergency savings. Okay. 6 to 12 months is also relatively short. So if you leave during an employee's market, you know, things are unlikely to go south quickly. You'll still be an employee's market. You can probably get re-employed when you come back. But if you leave in an employer's market, that is a bad idea, right? Unless you're willing to sort of disappear for 2 years or more, right? The economy is not really going to change. So if you leave when it's difficult to get a job, right? When you come back to Singapore, it's still likely to be difficult to get a job. Okay. Now, for folks who don't have sabbaticals and can't guarantee a job when you return, then you need to factor in the time required to find another job. And the rule of thumb I apply is always taking your annual salary, dividing it by $10,000. That will be the amount of months that you're likely going to be unemployed. So if your last drawn salary is $120,000, you may want to prepare for a year of unemployment, right? Yeah. And if you go by these numbers, right, there are some consequences of that. So if you are in your 40s, where it's not so easy to find a job because your salary is very high, then the concept of a mini retirement might not be feasible. You might want to opt to actually go for the financial independence and retire early movement instead, right? So that will allow you to actually go off and maybe never come back to the workforce again in Singapore, right? So these are the things that you might want to think about, okay? And I definitely need to compare these career breaks and how they stack up against FIRE, right? And we need to be fair, career breaks are a credible alternative to FIRE, but I think it is better than lying flat, right? You're going overseas, you're enjoying yourself, you know, for the 6 months to 12 months. So it's way better than lying flat in your room and not coming out from the house and getting defeated, right? And so you can do some stuff while you're young. These experiences create memory dividends for you. It accentuates the psychological richness in your life. Okay? Now, however, if you take multiple of these mini retirements, your working life can be extended longer as a result of not having earnings earlier in your life. So you do miss out on the later effects of compounding, right? You can't have it all. Okay? You can't have it all, right? And so these are my personal opinions, right? If you're a successful tech professional, I think you might be better off opting for FIRE, right? Because you can credibly get there because your salary is high. You just need to struggle while you're young and healthy. And you need to make sure that you get FIRE before there is a massive paradigm shift. For example, when quantum computing comes online, right? A lot of the stuff you learn in a computer science course is going to become obsolete because you learn everything in binary, but quantum computers run in qubits, right? So that's something you want to think about, right? There might be these massive paradigm shifts that might render your skills worthless, right? And the other thing is that if you're a tech professional, mini retirements can be involuntary. In other words, you get retrenched and then you can use a little bit of that money to travel for 6 months to 12 months. And because retrenchments are very common in the tech sector now, why not just wait for a retrenchment where you can get a payoff, right? Personally, I would not go for a mini retirement as it would be too much anxiety for job search unless I can really guarantee a job when I return. But do take note that I'm from a different generation and I think very differently when it comes to work-life balance, right? Okay. I still prefer the conventional use of annual leave, right? I'll use my annual leave, I'll disappear for a week from work to recharge, engage in some travel, and then I come back, right? And if I were to store and accumulate my leave, I will have a decent amount after 3 to 4 years of work, right? I can disappear for maybe 2 weeks, which is a lot already, okay? And I can continue to go for my FIRE journey. But that's just me. All right. If you want to learn more, you enjoy my content. I run a 5-day course on early retirement, and you can Google ERM intro, click on the first link, come for my next preview, and you can learn a little bit about what I actually do. And with that, that's all I have for this video. Thank you very much.